You are now listening to the I Think I Love My Wife podcast. And this is your best friend's best friend, Chidozie Okafor, ready to take you on another journey. Are you with me? Because I'm ready. Let's get it. In this episode, part 10 of our 10-part mini-series, we spent our last episode talking about the trade-offs people make as they get older. We also discussed dating people with children and the factors you must consider. We spend a bit of time talking about the things that I've learned over the course of my years and some of the big issues or deal breakers in a relationship.
Switching gears a little bit, have you ever dated a woman with children?
Personally, I have not. However, so this is I'm trying to think the best way to answer this. I've always said that I wouldn't do it.
Why?
Some of it's like ego. Some of it is I would hate for someone's kid, especially like if their kid is older, to be like, "You ain't my daddy." You know, I would hate. Like I'm like, what can you do? You're right. So
like,
that
yes, that's true.
So that's a little bit of a fear, which is like I think part of like me having a way that I like envision things. I think there's something to be said about going through an experience like that. That I think it's kind of like, I don't know. Are you Greek?
No.
Okay, I'm about to say.
Are you Greek?
Yeah, I'm an Alpha.
Okay.
Like going through like an experience, like let's say pledging or whatever, that's like not the like most exciting experience, but it brings you closer. And so I think like, although like especially if you guys were like, she's open to having another child or he's open to having another child, you guys get closer, we'll become closer through that experience. But I think there's something to be said about when you guys both are doing it for the first time and you don't know how it's going to work out. And there's like levels of fears that you guys are both, like I think there's something like special and unique about both of y'all figuring that out and going through that journey for the first time together versus this person kind of knows what is going to happen. And so their reactions or, just like how they may depend on you or lean on you is going to be very different their second time around or whatnot. And so I recognize that as I get older, there's more women that are likely to have kids. And I've recently given a friend advice on not letting that be a detriment or barrier.
Yeah.
But like for me, I think I'm at the stage where I wouldn't not explore it.
How can you give advice on it then?
Well, for him in his situation, I think he was more open than I was to it, right?
So what did you tell him?
I told him that it's important for him. And I think part of his hesitancy was like, he wasn't sure if he wanted to meet the child or whatnot. And I told him like, he needs to like lean in on that because that's going to give him a lot of the, I guess, assurance or sentiments or feelings that he needs to know in order that that's going to work, right? Like the vibe that he gets, that he sees the mom and the kid together, the interaction that he has with the child, like that's going to tell him a lot of things to know if this is something that can work or not. And so I think his concern was less around she has a kid, but like his dynamic with the kid. And so like it's funny, they got married now. And he was like, I remember when we met XYZ and we were talking about how we've been dating and I was asking you like, what should I do with the kid? And you told me to do it and I did it and it worked out. It wasn't like what I thought it would be. I think my concern is just like the way I envision it. Like I don't think anybody's like, hey, I want to meet someone that has a kid like in their ideal state. And so I got to get over that. But I also think there's like as a man, and I think as a man is different, right? As a woman, typically, if you meet a guy that has a kid, generally that's not his everyday world, right? He may have weekends where he has to spend with the kid and things of that nature, but that's not his everyday. Whereas like when you're a guy that meets someone that has a kid, like now you're like trying to figure out babysitting situations and all these. And so it creates more barriers, one. Two, I think when you think about like finances and things of that nature, now like as soon as y'all become serious, like you can't think of her as like, oh, I'm just with her, I'm not with the kid. Like the way you spend money is for both, like they're a package deal, right?
Yep.
And so you have to be ready for all of that. And if you're not, then it's not going to be successful. And so that's something that I just have to continue to work through because those are a lot of different levels that like I haven't, I've been around for 33 years. That hasn't been a consideration that I've thought of until recently. And so now I'm going through the motions of thinking about what that looks like, how I feel, could I get over it, or how would I get past it? How would I act in these situations? And I don't think that's for me, it's not like a boom, boom, boom. Like, I really have to like this person a lot. She gotta be damn near perfect in my eyes.
Okay.
But it's not a deal breaker.
Well, I'm happy to hear that. Yeah, I mean, at this age, like, it's just sort of a thing. Like, we are old enough to have children. We're old enough to have multiple children, and people have been in serious relationships and out of serious relationships at this phase in our lives. So it's just something to really process and know your stance on. But I truly am happy to hear that you are open to dating women with children, because I think more women are open to it.
Yeah, but it's a different thing though for them.
It is a different thing, but still, like, we want to know. If I had a kid, I would want to know that if I had a kid and I was single, I would want to know that a guy is like open to me as an individual, but also me with a child.
Yeah. I agree, and it's funny. It's interesting because I've been torn with this in a lot of ways. Because one of my really good friends from undergrad, we still friends, but like, you get older and the people don't live in the same city, kind of like you just don't talk as much. But his mom and his dad wasn't around when he was born, like as a kid. But fortunately, like his stepfather, which is now his like dad, came in and like assumed that responsibility. I think that he went on to have like, I guess two, either one or at least one, maybe two. I can't remember his brother, which if both of them or just one of them is through his stepfather and his mom. And so they end up having their family, but he's spoken to me multiple times about the impact that his stepfather has had in his life. And so I see that as like, wow, look at this role you can play. But I'm also like, I'm human and I'm selfish. And I'm like, that wasn't what I intended for myself. But again, like the same way I say about women and like things not looking the way that they want to look, I have to be mindful of that too. Like things may not look the way that I intended for it to look or want it to look. Doesn't mean that like a better level of happiness can't come from that, right? And so it's just a constant level of it's like a continual conversation I'm having with myself as I recognize that. And also, like, I think we talk about women with children or someone with children, right? And I think the general connotation is that like it happened out of wedlock, right? And like we're at the age where like people are getting married, they had a kid, and then they get divorced, right? And so it's not like someone messed up and there was a miracle from this like situation. And it was just like it didn't work out, but like, you had kids and then the relationship didn't work out. And so I think, I highlighted that to say, because I don't want people to feel like, oh, you have a kid, like you made a mistake, right? There's multiple reasons why kids come out of different situations, but I'm more mindful of it and I'm trying to like work through what that means for me and how I feel. But I think just like anything else, it's really going to be predicated on that person and how amazing they are.
Yeah, I mean, I think that makes sense. We have to take each scenario, each dating scenario, each situationship on a per person basis. So I think that makes sense.
I'm growing where I'm going.
Yeah, I mean, you are who you are. And that's okay.
I mean, what's your perspective on it? I mean, I know you're in a situation, you got a man now, but does he have a kid?
He actually does have a kid.
Oh, look at that.
He does have a kid. But he's not the first guy that I've dated with a kid. So
it's funny, and I want your perspective on it. We said it on a podcast before, but I think women, despite like their ability to cut things off and dead it real soon and have like this, like we like to clown them around like having this long laundry list of checklist of things they want in a partner. I think they have a better ability than men in like letting things go that may not be their ideal to make it work, right? And I think that's an example of one of them. Like If you compare the average guy and what he's willing to say, he's not, his list may be shorter, but like he's like, if it ain't this list, I ain't trying to, in terms of what I'm willing to like invest in and the potentials that I'm willing to take serious, I'm not budging. Where women, I think over time are like, they might have a longer list, but they're a lot more lenient and not in the like I'm settling kind of way, but they just recognize like what's important sooner.
Yeah, I mean, I believe that women are much more flexible in a lot of ways than men are, and this is just one of those ways. I too would love, or would have loved, or would love. I guess I'm not married yet, so I can't really say that. But I think the ideal is to be with someone who doesn't have a kid because it's easier to relate to them. It's easier to discuss what it means to have a family. It's easier to sort of set a new system and create values and create understanding, shared understanding with the person who is starting from the same point of view. But with the person who has a kid, they already have perspective on what it means to raise a kid, what it means to, select schooling. They literally have a perspective on everything, and it can create tension because you're like, well, that's not how I think about raising my kid, or that's not how I want my kid to interact with other people, or these are the types of things that I want them to do. So I 100% agree. It definitely adds friction or tension. Yeah. It definitely causes for more conversation.
Oh yeah,
and it's
damn,
nicer.
You did a kid and long. This guy got to be amazing, man. I got to meet this guy. He is a kid and long distance. I'd have been like, probably why you might get married before I do. Like, I'm like, damn.
I know. I mean, yeah, it's a lot to deal with, or handle or whatever. But yeah, I mean, I guess I kind of got rid of that or deaded that as a requirement a while ago. And I think that's because a lot of men have children, but yeah, I mean, if you can be in that situation, then more power. But I think a lot of women find themselves in situations where a guy has a kid, and that's just
I'm realizing that's the reality. I'm not deading it. I treat it like tall women. Like I'm not gonna not talk to you because you don't look the way I want. It's not set up the way I want it. Like it's just an obstacle we got to get through. Figure out what our new normal is gonna look like.
Oh, you got a list, man. Okay.
What you mean you got a list?
You got a list. You have very clear requirements.
No. Now you're making assumptions. I recognize.
I mean, I've heard them, Jadozi.
I recognize that I'm not the tallest person in the world, and so like I'm 5'8". So if I meet a woman that's 5'11", that wasn't probably like most guys like to put their arm around the girl's shoulder. I can't really do that, and so in the same way, like I could easily like, oh, she's too tall, right? But I don't. I'm like, I'm not going to let that be a reason why I wouldn't approach a woman because she's a lot taller than me. Is the same way I'm like, well, she has a kid. I'm not going to let that be the reason why I don't get to know her and see like what that could potentially be. That's all I'm saying.
This is so interesting because I also let go of that too.
Yeah, because you got older. That happens with women. They trade in height for honesty. It happens. Let me tell you something. I used to do this. Ah, man, I wish I could videotape this. It would have been real grainy. In college, when y'all was like 18 and 19, you come into your own and you feeling yourselves, especially if you're cute. And you're like, I want this guy, da, da, da. And I would sit, like literally like we had the MSC, I would sit. And I was like, let me tell you the realities of what you want. And I would dump like the little container that had all the sugar packets and like the Splenda and everything on the table and say, okay, you want a black guy, right? And now take some sugar packets off. As like, you want him to have like a college degree. And I would take some sugar packets off. And I was like, oh, you want him to be like straight. Okay, I would take some sugar packets off. Oh, you don't want any kids? Take sugar packets off. Oh, you want him to be 6'4"? Okay, take some more sugar packets off. By the time we did it, we had like 2 sugar packets. I'm like, now you're hoping in these 2 sugar packets that like you're attracted to the person and y'all get along. like that's so tough. But it wasn't until like I did like that exercise that like people were starting to see like, damn, like it is hard out here for what. But when you're
I
like
love
22,
that illustration.
when you're at 22, 23, you're like, I'm bad. I got a chance. But then you get like, it's like being young and you think you never get hurt, right? And then you get older and you're like, oh, all right, just 6 foot, And then
Yeah.
you get to like 29, you're like 30, you're like, he just gotta be my height, with heels on. And then you get over 30, you're like, listen, I just need to be a good guy. I don't really care, I'll sit down for the picture.
Yeah, I mean, things definitely change. It just sounds like for you and for some men, that comes later.
What comes, man? Don't
Like
put me in that box.
I mean, that's just what you said. You said like now. Yeah, I mean, I just think that like even the kid thing,
but that wasn't like the world though.
height
Like
thing,
that wasn't the general.
I agree, but my point is that all of those things that mattered so much then matter way less.
No, it still matters
to
me, and maybe I'm not in the point of my development. It still matters. It's just like, am I willing to overlook it? Like, and you also have to recognize women date typically older, and so the population of men that you were meeting at like 20, like 5 years ago is what I'm probably engaging in now because I wasn't dating older. And so that's something that I'm just facing more than you probably started facing that like 5 years ago.
I never really dated.
Well, not you, but like you in the plurality.
Yeah,
like
I mean, even I don't know.
Even these young bucks having kids earlier and earlier. So
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Okay, one last topic before we end this episode today, and I want to talk a little bit about fear. And that's a very broad term, but I think it's really important to talk about in the aspect of like dating, relationships, male, female dynamics, getting to know each other. And I think it really goes back to vulnerability and trust and honesty. But the question for you is like, what are you, when you think about being in a relationship and you thinking about marriage and you think about how you have matured from 23 and now being 33, what have you learned about yourself with regard to sort of like fear in a relationship or fear of like being with one person, and how has that changed over time?
That's a good question, and I don't know that like my perspective is similar or like the norm, right? I've only grown up, like, I guess for context, like I have a really big family, like a big extended family, but most of them are in Nigeria. So I have like these fake uncles and stuff like that, and culturally, like we don't really like my parents don't have a ton of friends that aren't like Nigerian and things of that nature, and there's only certain situations which they meet up. So I didn't have like real uncles that I saw often. So my only example like of a man is seeing my dad as a husband and as a father. And so that's just like going to college. Like I knew I was going to college. There wasn't no like if, ands, maybe. It was really about what college I was going to and like if I had to pay for it or not. Mm-hmm. That's how I've, experienced like or looked at like being in a relationship. I knew I wanted to be someone's husband because I thought that's what we just supposed to do. And that's all I've seen that, like, whether my dad was the best example or not the best example, that's all I've seen as, like, the step you take as a man, right?
It was normal to you.
That's very normal to me. And so that's probably why I haven't been, like, especially early on, in a rush to be in a relationship if I knew I wasn't going to treat it with the respect that it deserves. And so for me, I don't think that, like, me wanting that or being scared of commitment was ever a thing. I just think I just realized, like, if I wasn't going to commit, I wasn't going to put myself in that environment, right? And when I was ready to commit, I did it, and I do it like I go all the way in. And I think the biggest thing that I've learned over time is about myself. Some of that was like going to like counseling we went to. I've been to couple counseling before, and you really learn about yourself. And I recognize that some of the things that are triggers for me specifically are things that had to do with like my interactions growing up with family members and like siblings, right? And so like it has to do with how I like interact with people and how much I trust people to be there for me in ways, and how much I'm like, I guess you can call it vulnerability. Like I'm a person that's super vulnerable. Like I don't have a problem talking about how I feel, what it means to me. But where I'm not vulnerable is like depending on someone to do for me, even though I'm a doer for others, right? Because I think I've been disappointed in so many ways, or the ways that felt important to me, right, at the time, that carry over, that I don't want to disappoint someone to have a feeling like that. And so I'm always like trying to make sure if I tell you I'm gonna do something, I'm gonna do it. I'm a man of my word. I'm not gonna lie to you. I'm gonna be about what I'm about. But I don't trust people to be that way for me. And so I'm not vulnerable in a space to depend on people in that way. And so that's a space where I'm learning and figuring out how to do that more, because I feel like people need to be wanted in order to have that connection. Like if I'm with someone and like I'm doing everything that I need to do to cover myself, it's hard for someone to be connected to you when they feel like there's nothing they can do for you. And so that's probably something I've learned over time, is like, how can I be more present in the relationship in that way? And like, it's okay to like trust someone to do this thing for you, and start little and then build your way up. But that also explains like why, like for me, I just don't want to jump into a relationship, because those are the things that I need to see before I feel like I feel good about it. And I guess naturally, the way things go, you kind of have to be in a relationship to see it. But I don't want to have to like be isolated to one person to then like know, do you got my back or not, right? Are you going to be there for me? And like, when it's an inconvenience to yourself, right? Those are things that I'm looking for in a person, because of things that have happened in my past, to know like, okay, I don't have to do everything and take care of everything, and know that like this person got me.
That is so interesting, because I feel like I have dealt with that before. And I think it manifests in different people in different ways. And I'm glad you related it back to being vulnerable, because vulnerability is not just about showing your emotion, or being able to express how you really being able to express how you really feel. It is also, to your point about trusting people,
Yeah.
and being comfortable relying on someone to do something that they said they're going to do, or trusting them to follow through, or whatever the case may be. So I really think that's really, really, really interesting. And I think that I wonder, and I don't want to generalize, but I have definitely noticed this in men, some that I have dated. And I don't know. Well, I wonder if it's also related to the pressures that men feel in being the quote unquote man of the house, and not wanting to ask for things, or not wanting to get help or ask for help, or not wanting to be that type of person, versus just receiving, if that makes sense. And I wonder how that actually impacts relationships for you, in the sense that if you're able to recognize it, then how can you actually help someone that you're dating to like work with you on it? Because it's one thing to recognize it, but it's another thing to say, okay, this is something that, it's something that I know is a thing for me, and I love you, but I also am not always in the best place to like kind of like hold you accountable, or make sure that that you're following through. So, this is how we should handle it, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it's tough, and honestly, I can only speak to it in terms of my perspective and like my experience. I like to tell stories. So like, someone recently, have you ever done the pattern? The pattern, like you heard of the pattern app?
No, I don't think so.
So you and Bae should like take it and just see like what your like.
It's a quiz.
It's not even a quiz. So like, so I start back. So you know, like Myers Briggs, right?
Yes. Uh-huh.
And then have you heard of Enneagram?
Yes.
Okay,
Oh, he
so
actually told me about that.
I did or he did.
No, he did. He did.
Okay,
He told me about that.
and so someone else had told me like they're into like numbers and there's meaning behind like birth dates and times and all this other jazz, right? And so and I was like, you know, I believe in the Lord, like all these numbers, whatever, right? Because it's not exactly like zodiac, but it's kind of like
Mm-hmm.
that. And
Mm-hmm.
so someone recently was like, "Hey, have you know your pattern thingy?" And so it's an app, and basically all you do is put in like your name, your date of birth, if you know your time of birth, and like your location of birth, and it gives you this
Oh
information
my
about yourself.
gosh.
And so I did
I
it.
was literally just talking to friends about this over the weekend.
Yeah. So I did it
Literally.
recently, and it was like it was pretty spot on about it. And so I told someone about it, and I was like, "Yo, you should do this." After she did it, and I shared mine, and you can basically put other people's stuff in there. I don't think they see it if you know their information, and they'll show you like their information as well as like compatibility from like a friend standpoint or like a romantic standpoint. So she asked me, she saw mine. She's like, "Do you like push people away?" And I was like, "That's an interesting question because I think to answer your original question, if I were to give someone advice that I'm with, like if I feel like things are going really well, I know that I tend to push people away, and not like in a like I go crazy or whatever. It's more like in a passive,
Mm-hmm.
like I don't engage as much as I was before because
Mm-hmm.
I'm like this is moving faster than I wanted to move
And
emotionally,
you're like,
right?
whoa, 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 whoa,
And I
whoa.
was like, I need to pump the brakes because I need to like make sense of the feelings that are going on, and in some ways be in control of them, and you know, and so like I don't push, and that's friends too, right? And so it wasn't until she asked me that question that I realized, and I've been knowing that I do that, and so for someone like for with that has to deal with me, I think there's a plenty of rewards and benefits that come to dealing with me, especially like towards the back half of what we're doing. But in the beginning, I'm very much like on guard because I feel like I know what I bring to the table, and a lot of things that you hear about with men and women, that's not what I'm about. But it's like it takes work, and it's funny. Some of my closest friends now, especially from my previous job, like we're really good friends, and some of my really good female friends actually, they all probably could tell you the same story. When we met, there was probably some level of connectedness we felt, and probably more on their end, and we're like, oh, we're gonna be friends. Like we're gonna be friends. I was like, nah, we're not gonna be friends. Like I'm not. I don't need no more female friends. I'm good. And there was a level of like persistence with them, and not like they were being thirsty or they were like, oh, we got to be friends, but they just kept being themselves, being very genuine and showing love to almost to the extent where like like this is real. Like I'm not necessarily giving to this like I probably should, and they're still showing love where I then believed it and then started to pour into that relationship too. And those are some of like my
Mm.
best, not my best friends, but some of my most like strongest relationships because like I know they just got love for me, and and I'm reciprocating that love because I know like it don't got shit to do with my actions. They just have a love for me. I know I can count on them. They're dependable, but it took them doing without getting shit from me. Not that I was a jerk, but like I wasn't pouring in the way they were pouring in for me to see and know that that was real. And I recognize that's just something that I have to like. It's important for me to see, and so that would be something that I would have to like communicate with someone. Like there may be a point where like it looks like I'm pulling away, and just keep pulling me in because
Mm-hmm.
it's not like anything against them. It's more like a safety security mechanism for myself to feel more comfortable in this before I know I'm about to like unleash all that I got to love on you with. Like, let me make sure this is real.
Yeah, I have really direct experience with that. That is I think that is really interesting, and if I'm talking to you as a friend, I would really encourage you to reinforce that where you see a gap or where you feel yourself pulling away, because it is extremely counterintuitive to a woman who's like, oh, I think he's cool, or I care about him, or this is my friend, or whatever. it's just extremely hard to read.
Oh,
Extremely
I
hard.
agree. I get it. I can
So
only imagine. So I try to
yeah.
communicate. I'm working on communicating that. I haven't been in a situation where it's, I was in a relationship, right? Previously, but like, I think now now that I'm back in the dating scene, if it gets to a situation where like it's becoming serious, like communicating that up front, like, hey, I like you. This might happen. Don't read, like, I need you to pull me in.
Yes. Yeah. And that's all that anybody can really ask for is that help, the nudges in doing that.
And it's not even like I guess for me, it's not even like a nudge or like help. It's just like, don't take it the wrong way. Like, like don't take my actions the wrong way or keep doing you. Right.
Yeah.
And I think, I get that's hard because like if someone's acting a certain way towards you and then all of a sudden you naturally feel like it's shifting a bit to like not read into that as something negative.
Right. And that's why it's like, I mean, I don't know. I just see it as a nudge like, hey, it's not you, it's me.
Yeah. A nudge on my end, right?
Yeah, you nudging them.
Got you. I thought you were saying them nudging me to something. Got you.
No. You nudging them.
That's I agree. Totally agree. Damn, I feel like all these people know about my whole life now.
Great. We're being vulnerable. We're being honest. We're being forthcoming.
We've been a whole bunch of things in these past 10 episodes. I want to thank you for your time and being with me in this journey of recording this mini-series and facilitating this great conversation. I hope everyone enjoyed it. Again, we appreciate your time. We appreciate you for listening. Continue to spread the word. Tell a friend. Tell a coworker. Tell family to subscribe to and listen to us at I Think I Love My Wife podcast on all major platforms, and follow us at Think Love Wife. Currently getting ready for season 2. We'll have more in store for you this fall. In the meantime, check out Instagram for updates, and until then, I hope the conversation keeps going.